yes, I can take a knee, but then I can also be blackballed from the NFL and, not work at what I've been working towards for, the past 15, 20 years of my life. And it was a hard decision to decide not to kneel, but it actually compelled me to do more in my neighborhood, more in my community.
So I brought this up a little bit before the break about just the unrest that the country is in right now. I just ask you generally, Spencer, what are your thoughts about this moment that we're in?
Man, I'm so exhausted from it. And I feel like I feel bad even saying that, because like you want to have the energy to protest every single day and be out there for 10, 12 hours, hooting and hollering. But, we're what, 2 weeks into this? And I was at that first protest, Black Lives Matter protests off of Fairfax and 3rd Street. But yeah, it's just been heavy on my heart, knowing like I have a 1-year-old son, or about to be 1-year-old son. I have a 3-year-old daughter, and just understanding like I have to have this conversation with them one day. And how do I say that? How do I say like, hey, maybe dad didn't do the front lines, all 14 days, or having them questioning me down the road, like, why didn't you do more and whatnot? But I've always found solace in that, as much as people are protesting on the front lines and yelling and screaming, there's also people that are working behind the scenes trying to advance the initiative. And I've done a handful of things in terms of that aspect. But it's just so, it's exhausting to go through the same thing, what seems like month after month, year after year. Like, just understand. I told my wife this the other day. I was like, I'm tired of being reminded that I'm a Black man. Like, I know it. I understand it. I understand the trials and tribulations that come to it. I don't need to keep seeing Black men being slain or images of Black trauma on Instagram and Twitter all day to like reaffirm my Blackness or my commitment to this struggle. Like, the fact that I have this skin on me means that I'm in and of it, in my opinion. So I'm tired, but it seems like there's somewhat of a turning point coming. I don't know what that turning point is, but I think now that we have the attention of the masses, we can't go back. We can't afford to go back.
So you talked a second ago about you want to be able to tell your kids, hey, I was out there, I did something, I worked. Consequently, though, or subsequently rather, how much have you given thought to the conversations you'll have about your children and the police? And what are you hoping those conversations might be like maybe 10 or 12 years from now?
Hopefully in 10 to 12 years now, there's a little bit more optimism in it than there is now. Even this morning on my jog, a police car drove by me and I immediately felt that tenseness, that like, keep your head down, don't look, don't bring attention to yourself. And as somebody whose family, on both sides of my family, I have officers, I have, detectives, my uncle, Earl Paysinger, rest in peace, was the deputy chief of police of Los Angeles for 30 years. I'm talking second in charge to the chief of police. So, understanding that it doesn't matter, like, if the police know you're a Paysinger at the end of the day, like, they're going to see a Black man, and with that comes its own weight. But hopefully in 10 to 12 years, there is more conversation between sides and we can come to some sort of agreement of whether it's the whole defunding that's happening right now or what have you, just coming to an agreement that like, or coming to a place myself that I can tell them, like, when you see a police officer, you don't have to tense up as much as you can. That's my goal. But right now we're just not there. Like, we see them as an oppressive force, and, hopefully the things that I'm doing today can alleviate that in 10, 12, 20 years.
One of the major developments in all of this was that NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell issued an apology and said he was wrong for, quote, not listening to players earlier who were protesting for police brutality. The name, of course, he did not mention was Colin Kapernick, who started the protest, started with his protest for police brutality back in 2016. What did you make of Roger Goodell's admission?
Honestly, I took nothing from it. I took nothing positive from it. It took 30 players to create a video for him to say yes, to say like, oh, let me sit down in the comfort of my own home and read cards off of a screen. Like, we've been having this conversation with you for 3-4 years now. you don't need to read from a prompt. Like, you know why you're wrong. You know how long you've been wrong. You know who you've been wrong to. So, don't do a PR stunt to say that you're on our side, because that's just the hot thing to do right now. Leave your home, put on the mask, and go march with the people in your city. Go donate somewhere. Go do something to show us that you're in it and of it. Like, not sitting in the comfort of your own home reading cards from a prompt. It just didn't necessarily feel genuine to me, because you could see literally where the period was at every sentence. It was like, I do stand with it. I do. I was like, what are we doing with this? Like, it's all optics at the end of the day.
It was tough to take, because I tend to, and people can say this is unfair, and if you do, okay, you're allowed your opinion. I tend to judge people by what they do when it's not convenient. And I guess it sort of plays off that old adage about, it's not what you do in the light that matters, but what you do in the dark. Mm-hmm. And to me, they had their moment to stand on the right side of history, and they blew it. Yeah. And there's no amount of apology that's ever going to get that moment back.
Yeah.
Like, it's not coming back. Like, you don't get a redo on something that was that important, because now that public opinion seems to have shifted, that there's attention, the masses are calling for police reform. It's much easier and a much safer environment for Roger Goodell to say that. It's so safe, right? And it's like, okay, I'm not gonna, to borrow from the old Chris Rock joke, I'm not gonna give you credit for taking care of your kids, right? That's like, you don't get to babysit your children, right? They're yours.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
So you don't get to say, like, hey, guess what? Police brutality is wrong. You knew that in 2016. So It's like, so now it just rings a little hollow. Along those same lines, though, you were somebody, you were still in the league when Colin began his protest. And I believe you're on the Miami Dolphins when several players on your team decided to take a knee. And at least based off what I read, this seemed to be a very difficult decision for you not to kneel. Explain what your perspective was then and maybe where it is today.
It was very difficult. Guys I still talk to today, Jelani Jenkins, Mike Thomas, Arian Foster, like I literally talk to those guys weekly still to this day. And I just remember that leading up to that, where the question around the league, and it seemed like on every single sports show was like, how many players going to kneel? Who's going to kneel? Who should kneel? Who shouldn't kneel? Like, it was taking away from even prep from the game, because it just had so much real estate in my brain. And I'm thinking about just the metrics of it, thinking about my stance on it. Like, obviously I believe that, everything that Cap kneeled for is completely correct. Like, he kneeled for the right reasons. And the fact that it's sort of been co-opted by this, like, disrespecting the flag or some troops bullshit. Like, it's the fact that people are not listening to the message really hit home with me. And for me, being an undrafted guy, signing 1-year contracts, league minimum every single year, yes, I can take a knee, but then I can also be blackballed from the NFL and, not work at what I've been working towards for, the past 15, 20 years of my life. And it was a hard decision to decide not to kneel, but it actually compelled me to do more in my neighborhood, more in my community, because I remember, I think it was LeBron James, when they asked him, are you planning on kneeling? And he said, no, we're past kneeling right now. Like, now it's time about action. And he got a lot of slack for that, because it showed that, or at least appeared to show that he wasn't unified with the NFL players that took a knee. But in the end, it was, kneeling is the first step. What can we do after that? And, even dating back to that day, I still think about it. I still think about what would have happened to my life if I did kneel. I'd be lying to you if I said I wasn't scared of, what to come or what would have came from that. But at the time, realizing that, I have to provide for my family, have to make sure that, they're okay at the end of the day, I decided not to kneel.
Do you regret it?
Some days I absolutely do, because I see the impact that it's had. And I know potentially you can even go back to connecting it to All-American, having a show about a guy that took a knee. Potentially could have been a great storyline. And I don't know if we even be able to touch that down the road, but just looking at the things that I've done, on the right side of this, it would have just added to the story so much more if I did take a knee that day.